All right, everyone, I am so excited to show you our newest property. If you look behind me, this 100-unit property could
close
be
to
all
everything
yours.
that you need,
I'm talking
centralized,
amenities.
perfect to...
What is this? A commercial real estate show or a beauty contest? Right now, you're probably thinking beauty contest. Hey, I get it. But as disappointing as it may be, this is a commercial real estate show. In fact, this is a commercial real estate show that sellers of commercial property do not want to miss. Because in today's Commercial Inc. episode, I'm going to show you how to sell your property quickly, efficiently, and for top dollar. I'm Benny Spensieri of Cresco International and Brick & Lens Media, always bringing you the best in commercial real estate, business, and finance. Today, we're going to talk about the secrets of selling a commercial property. You're going to find out how to attract the best investors who will make the best offers. And if you stick around to the end, I'm going to show you the secret of squeezing out a little bit more when you sell that property. So get your notepads ready and pay close attention. You don't want to miss not 1 second of this episode. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's do this. If you own a commercial property, there's going to come a day that you're going to be selling it. And like all sellers, you want the quickest and most efficient sale. Not to mention the highest price possible. Sounds easy enough until your property hits the market, and then watch the chaos begin. You know, little things like a ton of lowball offers coming in, no money investors coming to you asking for creative financing, or investors inviting themselves to your property unannounced, letting all your tenants and employees understand that the property's for sale. Sellers, there are 2 golden rules to selling a commercial property. These 2 rules are critical, and if you skip just one of these rules, it can cost you money or prevent a sale from happening. So let's start with the one that's the most fun. Promotion. You've heard the old saying, first impressions are lasting impressions. Well, the promotion of your property is that first impression. So if the promotion is done right, the investors can't help but notice your property. If it's done wrong, they ignore your property and move on to the next. Promotion is that exciting package that gets your property noticed. The best example I can give is our Commercial Inc. episodes. Our exciting videos, dramatic music, and informative narration turns our clients' properties into a real estate show that gets noticed by thousands of investors. Did I mention informative narration? And the better the promotion, the more investors will notice your property and the better chance you have of selling your property for top dollar. But as important as promotion is, if you leave out the next step, it could be critical to the sale of your property. You buy a gift for that very special person. You took the time to wrap the gift with some gorgeous wrapping paper, and you top it off with a big, beautiful bow. The special day finally gets here. You carefully hand the gift over and watch in anticipation as that someone special starts to unwrap it. As the gift is being unwrapped, all these thoughts are going through your mind. Will she like the gift? Will she like you? Will you get the prize? And then... So to keep this from happening to you, I'm going to tell you all about golden rule number 2. Folks, as pretty as that package was, it didn't keep our friend here from getting his feelings hurt when she saw what was inside. It's what's inside the package that counts. Now this guy is not getting a second chance, and neither will you if you don't do it right the first time. But before we get to golden rule number 2, I want to talk about the number 1 reason commercial property doesn't sell. And that reason is price, of course. I bet you thought I was going to say cheap investors, lazy brokers, or a bad market. That may be true in some cases, but price is always going to be the number 1 reason property doesn't sell. And it's always the number 1 thing that sellers continually get wrong. So if you're a commercial property owner, you're probably an intelligent person. I mean, after all, you own and operate hotels, apartments, retail centers, assisted living facilities. So you got to know what you're doing, right? And if you were looking to buy another commercial property, I'm pretty sure you would know what you should pay and what you shouldn't pay for that commercial property. But when the day comes that the seller decides to sell their property, they suddenly seem to forget everything they knew when they were investors. And all of a sudden we see these experienced, educated business people basing the value of their property on what it's going to be in the future for the next guy. Big development that's going to take place on their property 10 years from now. Brokers tickling their ears with a bunch of, I can get you a lot of money if you list your property with me. Advice from inexperienced family members and friends. Italian marble being placed in a 1985 motel, or a new coat of paint on a retail center. And my personal favorite is using the asking price of other properties on the market for sale that are all overpriced and not selling. When promoting a property, the goal is to attract educated, experienced investors who are ready to buy your property. So how can you expect these investors to not know the difference between a good investment and a bad investment? And while time is being wasted, these investors are moving on to other property. And you just missed your window of opportunity to get the highest price you can for your commercial property. Sellers, your window of opportunity is when your property is considered a hot commodity on the market. All the investors are looking at it. This is the time when your property attracts the most attention and the most investors who will pay you the most money. The more offers that come in, the better chance you have of getting the biggest and best price. Sellers, your window of opportunity lasts for maybe 6 weeks. After that, your property becomes old news. You lose all those investors and all the money they would have paid you as they're moving on to other properties. Sellers, your window of opportunity lasts for maybe 6 weeks. After 6 weeks, your property becomes old news, and those investors are moving on to other properties. And if they do come back to yours, they will not be making the same offer, guaranteed. So sellers, price your property right away. So what's the best way to determine what your asking price should be when you put your property on the market? One way is to hire an appraiser who will provide an appraisal determining the value based on recent sales of properties similar to yours in your area. But if you don't want to pay for an appraisal, you can hire a broker to perform a broker price opinion on your property. The difference being, a broker price opinion gives you a range value, where an appraisal gives you an exact value. So maybe your property range would be somewhere between $5 million and $5.3 million, according to the broker price opinion. But if it was an appraisal, they might come in and say its exact value is $5.2 million. Either one works. Most important, if any lowball investors were to come to you and question the value of your property, you would have an appraisal or a BPO to show them what the value is. But as good as appraisals and BPOs are at determining value of your property, there's really only one thing investors are looking for, and that's how much the property makes or how much the business earns. So whether you own a hotel, apartment building, offices, retail center, medical practice, the investors are looking at the gross revenue and the net operating income. Investors want to know what the current gross revenue is and the net operating income. And once you show them the money, they're going to show you an offer. Now, there are numerous calculations that investors use to formulate a value of a property. Cash on cash, rate of return, payback ratio. But today we're going to talk about one of the ones most frequently used, the capitalization rate, also known as the cap rate. The cap rate is a return the investor expects to earn on their investment based on the net operating income and the purchase price. Now, since this is not a commercial real estate formula class, we're not going to go into great detail on what a cap rate is, but the one thing you should understand is the higher the cap rate, the lower the price, and the better the deal is for the investor. And on the other hand, the lower the cap rate, the higher the price, and the better the deal is for the seller. So as an investor, your job is to get the cap rate as high as possible. As a seller, your job is to get the cap rate as low as possible. But no deal ever gets done unless everybody's happy. So the cap rate's got to be somewhere within a good compromise. So the commercial property is most likely going to sell from whatever the market value is at the time, based on the going cap rate. So how do you figure out what the going cap rate is? So that part's easy. Let's say you own an apartment building, and there are 10 recent apartment building sales close by, with each selling for somewhere between a 7 and a 9% cap rate. So it wouldn't be unreasonable to imagine that your property is going to sell for a 7 to 9% cap rate. So now that you know what the market cap rate is, now it's time to apply it to your property to determine the value. So let's say you're the owner of an apartment building that's netting $1 million every year. So based on an 8% cap rate and a net operating income of $1 million, the investor's going to offer you $12.5 million. But maybe you're a seller looking for a quicker sale, and you're willing to let your property go at 9% cap rate, in which case you're going to end up with $11 million at the sale. Or maybe there's an investor out there that really loves your property and they're willing to offer you a 7 cap rate, in which case you're going to end up with $14.3 million when you sell your property. So you see where I'm going with this? So sellers, whether it's cap rates or any other investment formula, it's what your property earns that determines the value. That doesn't mean what it earned 5 years ago or 5 years in the future. It's what your property is making right now. So if you want more money for your property, get those numbers up. Now, appraisals, BPOs, and cap rates are all great ways to determine the value of your commercial property. But the best way of all is to let the investors tell you. No, I'm not talking about lowball investors and no money players. I'm talking about legitimate investors who make legitimate offers. So you package up your property, like you learned in this video, you price it slightly above market. Hey, you gotta leave room for negotiation. And the offers start to roll in. Now this is where it gets really interesting. So let's say you price your property at $5 million and right away 10 offers come in. 3 of them are lowball offers, 1 of them is an offer with somebody who has no money. And we know what to do with those. But the remaining 6 offers are from legitimate investors with a lot of money, and they're ready to spend it on your property. And all those offers are coming in around $4.7 million. Sellers, the investors just told you the true market value of your property, $4.7 million. Now, savvy selling will grab that offer, pick out the best buyer, and close the deal. So now that you know the 2 golden rules of selling a commercial property are pricing it right and promoting it right, you might have a shot at selling it yourself. But there's probably a better shot you're not going to sell it yourself. Oh, that's great. First, you're telling them all they need to do is price it right and promote it right, and they'll sell it. And then you're telling them they can't sell it. Which one is it, Romeo? Calm down, fella. I'm getting to that. So sellers, even though you're pricing your property right and promoting it right, you're probably not going to be able to get over the fact that you are FSBO. That is for sale by owner for you novices. Because you got to understand, when a buyer's coming to see your property, if they understand that there's no brokerage involved, you're not paying a broker fee. So that means you're ready to take a significant discount in your pricing, right? And just like sellers are looking for the buyer who's going to overpay for their property, buyers are always looking to undercut the seller. My recommendation would be to hire professional brokerage and let them handle the sale of your property. It'll be a lot less messy, and those brokers will be sure to keep the lowballers out and the no-money investors away from your property. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why not hire Crestcore International to sell your property? And as much as I appreciate that, we may not be able to get to everybody's property. So whether it's Crestcore International or another reputable real estate firm, give them a call. You won't be disappointed. Don't cheapen your property by tossing it to a handful of brokers expecting them to send you a buyer, because it doesn't work that way. If you have no formal agreement in place, there's no obligation for these brokers to represent you in a proper fashion. Your property information could be haphazardly thrown onto the internet. Somebody could find it with different prices all over the place with different brokers pretending to represent you. That's not the way you want to go. And once that bad publicity gets out, there's no going back. You might even find strangers walking into your place of business telling everybody that your place is for sale. That's something you don't want either. And once this bad publicity gets around, the real investors will run for the hills and find other property. And if you don't believe me, give it a try, and then give me a call when you're done with the fun stuff. So now that you've packaged up your property correctly and you priced it appropriately, it is showtime. Not so fast. In the beginning of this episode, you promised your audience that you would show them the secrets to earn more money when they sell. Man, I hate that guy. But he's right. I did promise you that. So all through this episode, I've been telling you you can sell your property for no more than market value. But there are some things you can do to squeeze out a little bit more out of that investor. A sale leaseback or a sale with an option to purchase, those are just 2 options. But the one that I think is the best is seller financing.
Huh?
Sellers, seller financing is your pot of gold and a great retirement plan. And all you got to do is beat the banks. Beat the banks? What is he talking about? You see, when the banks are offering high interest rates or less than desirable terms, or not lending at all, it's time for the commercial property owners to step in and take the place of the banks and earn all the money. So the number 1 rule in seller financing is to make sure that the buyer puts down a sufficient down payment. In the real estate world, this is known as skin in the game. And the more skin in the game the investor puts in, the more money the seller walks away with at the closing table, and the less risk the seller has. So what's the sufficient amount of skin in the game? Well, that's completely up to you. But keep in mind, you have to cover your debt, you have to cover your closing costs, you have to cover your broker's commissions. So the down payment has got to be enough to cover all of that at least. And let's not forget, you want to walk away with a little something in your pocket at the closing table. My personal rule is no less than 25% down. I've seen it go up as high as 50%. However, 25% down is enough to show that the investor's serious, that they're going to take care of the property, and that they're not going to lose that money. So how does seller financing add value to your commercial property? You probably already know that the higher the interest rate, the lower the value of your property. The investor has to pay more every month to the bank in debt service payments, so therefore they can't pay you the same amount of money had the interest rate been lower. But if you beat the banks with a lower interest rate, the investor can afford to pay you a higher price for your property. How much more? Let's find out. So to keep this as simple as possible, let's use a 100-room apartment complex that's 100% occupied. The rents are $100 a month, the expenses are 50%, and the net operating income is $600,000 a year. So when we apply an 8% cap rate to the net operating income, it brings the value to $7.5 million. So now this is where it gets really interesting. Let's say the investor makes a full price offer of $7.5 million, and he comes in with 35% down, leaving a loan balance of $4,875,000. The bank is generously offering an 8% interest rate and a 20-year amortization, making the debt service payment $489,000 a year. So with the apartments only making $600,000 net operating income, if we deduct $489,000 from that, it leaves the investor with $111,000 every year for tax cash flow. I don't know about you, but if I'm investing that much money in a property, I want to make sure I'm getting a better return. So, thanks to the banks, you're either not selling your property, or at least you're not selling it at a price that's acceptable to you. So now it's time to play Beat the Banks. The rules are simple. Whatever the banks are offering, you offer better. So let's take another look at this 100-unit apartment complex. But this time, let's replace the 8% interest rate with 6%. Also, let's remove the amortization schedule, making this an interest-only deal. So now let's see what happens. Debt service payment is now reduced to $292,000 from $489,000. And now the investors before tax cash flow went from $111,000 to $308,000. That sounds like a better deal to me. So this is all great for the buyer, but what does this do for the seller? Well, number one, you actually get to sell your property instead of having the banks constantly turn down your buyer's loans. Number two, and if you're the lucky seller of this 100-unit apartment complex, you get to collect a hefty $2,655,000 at the closing table. And number three, you get to collect $295,000 every year in interest for as many years as you like. So most banks will offer 5-year commercial loans. Now, I'm no mathematician, but if you hold a loan for 5 years, you provide paper, that looks like you're going to be earning an extra $1,462,000 in interest at the end of the 5 years. Once again, no mathematician, but it looks like you just earned $9 million on your $7.5 million sale. Why stop there? Remember, the game is to beat the banks. The longer loan you offer, the more interest you earn, and the more money the investor may pay you. And the more money an investor may pay you for your property. Time is a very valuable commodity to investors. It's not unusual for them to pay more if the loan is really juicy. So in this episode, we're covering just one example of how a property owner can earn more than their asking price when using seller financing. But there are more ways to use seller financing and other sales tactics to squeeze out more value when selling a property. Too many to cover in just this one episode of Commercial Inc. But if you're interested in learning more, feel free to contact me or any one of our Crestcore International agents anytime. I'd love to hear from you. Well, we covered a lot in today's episode of Commercial Inc. Cap rates, seller financing, interest, amortization schedules, debt service payments, property values, breaking the banks, beating the banks, avoiding lowball offers, and we learned about the 2 golden rules to sell commercial property. Price it right and promote it right. Whether you decide to sell on your own or use brokerage, if any of you have any questions on selling commercial property, creating an exciting media campaign, or getting your property on an episode of Commercial Inc., be sure to reach out anytime. For those of you who are not ready to sell your properties but are interested in our commercial media services, be sure to check out our company, Brick & Lens Media Services, who, by the way, is responsible for these great Commercial Inc. episodes you're looking at right now. As always, I want to thank you for joining me on this episode of Commercial Inc. Be sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed this episode. Also, be sure to check out the website, Crestcore International, if you want to see the latest in commercial listings. So most important, be sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. Until then, I'll catch you on the next episode of Commercial Inc.
Cut.
All right. Hey, I wonder whatever happened to that guy that thought it was a great idea to give his girlfriend an old boot.
Maybe next time you can bring me the other boot so I can have a perfect match. Maybe next time you can bring me the other boot so I can have a perfect match. Oh.
Hey, this is my friend Marlena. He's filming right now. We want to show you guys an old dance that we used to do back in the day. Here we go. Doing the bump. Woo! Sexy, sexy. Let's get the back. Woo!
Doing the bump.
There it is.
I'm at work doing the bump.
Jerome never seen anything like this. Jerome, you never seen anything like this. This is how we used to do it. You guys can't dance today. Forget about it. Here we go. Oh! 260-old people going.